At age 77, Don Henley, the legendary voice of the Eagles, has finally admitted a truth that leaves the whole world silent. That after all the glamour, after millions of records sold, after the noisy and broken romances, he has found a woman, the one he calls the greatest love of his life. Just imagine a small boy growing up in Texas who once dreamed of becoming a football player but was pushed onto a different path. It was the drums. It was music that opened up for Don Henley a journey that no one could have anticipated. From the small stages of his hometown to standing at the pinnacle of glory with the Eagles, one of the greatest bands of the century. Yet, like a bitter paradox, the higher he stood, the steeper the price he had to pay. Immortal songs like Wasted Time or Desperado are not just music, but cries from the heart, pieces of the life he has lived and lost. Don Henley has gone through Lois Child, a beautiful love but broken in suspicion and bitterness. He went through Stevie Nicks, a legendary romance in the music world, but ended in pain that could not be soothed. He went through Lois Child's, Maren Jensen, women who once brought him fleeting peace. But then it all stopped at the words, "not enough." And then, fate led him to Sharon Summerall, an ordinary woman, far from the glamour, a former model who once strode on prestigious runways, but carrying within her multiple sclerosis. For many, that would be the end of a romance. But for Don Henley, that was precisely the beginning of an eternal love. He chose to stay. He chose to hold Sharon's hand, despite the illness, despite time, despite the stage lights gradually fading. And from that moment, Don Henley was no longer just a music legend, but became a real man. After the wedding in 1995 at their private ranch in the Santa Monica Mountains, Don Henley turned to a new chapter. It was no longer the years of wandering under blinding stage lights, nor the stormy romances. Instead, it was tranquility. A family home, something he had never had for decades before. That wedding. People still talk about it as one of the rare moments when Henley opened the door to his private life for the world to witness. A guest list gathering the greatest names in music: Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, Sting, Tony Bennett. And in that warm atmosphere, Jackson Browne sang "A Gift." Tony Bennett raised his voice full of emotion, but the most important thing was not the luxury, but Don Henley's eyes, shining with simple happiness as he held Sharon's hand. From then on, Henley was no longer the man lost in fragile romances. He became a steadfast husband, a devoted father. They have 3 children together, Annabelle, Julia, and Will. For Henley, this is the true legacy of his life, not the record sales or the cross-continental tours. He once frankly shared that the decision to leave Los Angeles to move back to Texas was a turning point. He wanted his children to grow up in an ordinary environment, where family values are more important than glamour, where laughter and love overpower all the noise of Hollywood. That was also a reminder to himself. Glamour can fade, but family is the only thing that remains. With Sharon, though the illness is always a silent challenge, Henley has never seen it as a burden. On the contrary, her resilience has given him a new source of strength. In Henley's eyes, Sharon is not only the woman of his life, but also the light illuminating his final years, helping him find the peace he has chased for so long in music and crowded auditoriums. The love with Sharon not only changed Don Henley's private life, but also left a deep mark on his music. If, in the previous years, Henley's songs were often filled with loss, separation, and romantic sorrow, then from when Sharon entered his life, his music suddenly took on shades of maturity, peace, and depth. Just listen to "Everything Is Different Now," a love song not noisy, not dramatic, but full of sincerity. Henley wrote it like a confession that everything has changed since Sharon appeared. No more endless adventures, no more long empty nights. Instead, a home, enduring love, the responsibility of a man who has truly found his place. In the album Cass County, we see that transformation even more clearly. Henley's music at this time no longer chases trends. No need to prove anything to the world. Instead, he returns to his roots, with country sounds, with the rustic Texas quality. Perhaps that's why many say Sharon has not only become a wife, but also the inspiration helping Henley find himself again. After so many years wandering amid fame, the most touching thing is that though Sharon carries multiple sclerosis, an unpredictable disease with no definitive cure, Henley has never shown hesitation. He once said, "She is stronger than anyone I've ever met." And that strength has made him cherish, be grateful, and love even more deeply. It can be said, from after committing to Sharon, Don Henley has stepped into a new chapter of life, where music becomes thanks, where each song is a piece of simple happiness, and where he realizes greatness does not lie in fame, but in the ability to keep a love intact until the end. When he had a family, Don Henley made a decision that surprised many, leaving Los Angeles, leaving Hollywood, where he built his name, to return to Texas. For many artists, the glamour of the entertainment capital is everything, but for Henley, he understood that true happiness lies elsewhere. He once said he wanted his children to grow up in a simple environment where family values, community, and closeness to nature are more important than any fame. That's why Henley and Sharon chose Dallas, a city not too noisy, but enough to nurture a peaceful childhood for Annabelle, Julia, and Will. The image of Don Henley, once a symbol of wildness on stage, now becoming a father taking his children to school, a husband building a home with his wife, astonishes the public. But perhaps it is in that moment that he is truly complete. From a star chasing glamour, Henley becomes a mature man, knowing how to let go to keep what matters most. This decision also reflects courage, because giving up the stage lights to choose family life has never been easy for artists of Henley's stature, but he did it not under pressure, but willingly, with the love he has for Sharon and the children. And from this Texas land, Henley found a rare balance. By day, a father, a husband, and when he picks up the guitar, he returns to music, but with a different mindset, more peaceful, more profound. Throughout their journey together, the biggest challenge for Don Henley and Sharon Summerall is multiple sclerosis, a chronic, sudden, and highly unpredictable disease. For many, that news could be a barrier to stay away, but Henley chose the opposite path, to come closer, hold hands tighter, and love more deeply. Henley once shared, "Sharon is the strongest woman he has ever met. The disease forced her to leave the fashion runway, but could not take away her will to live. She is persistent, optimistic, and maintains an independent spirit, and that is what has made Henley admire even more, and more determined to commit." In the public's eyes, Henley is an immortal rock star, but in his private home, he is simply a man standing by his wife, sharing good days and difficult ones. The way he faces Sharon's illness is not with pity, but with absolute respect and love. What is worthy of admiration is, Henley has never let the disease become the center of family life. He often says, "She still remains herself, still strong and independent. I am simply lucky to accompany her." And that calm and loving attitude has helped Sharon have more strength to fight each day. And from that love, Henley writes songs full of depth, where music is no longer just the lament of a broken heart, but becomes gratitude for a steadfast love, an unshakable bond. This is Don Henley in his twilight years, an artist who has gone through all glory, but the greatest happiness comes from overcoming storms with his wife and preserving a home full of love. Don Henley's music, after committing to Sharon Summerall, has changed markedly. If before, we see his songs often filled with suffering from separation and the loneliness of a lost star, then in the later phase, music becomes a mirror reflecting peace and maturity in the soul. Listen again to Inside Job or Cass County. People easily recognize the voice still thick and poignant, but hidden deep inside is no longer a broken heart. Instead, it is the voice of an experienced man, recounting his life's journey with gratitude. Especially the song "Everything is Different Now" is like a love letter sent especially to Sharon. Simple, sincere, but steeped in emotion. Henley no longer needs to prove himself with chart-topping hits. Instead, he writes to record what is truly important: love, family, perseverance through challenges. For him, each song now is not just for the audience to hear, but also for his children, and for Sharon to understand that his music is a vow of love. Notably, "The Heart of the Matter," a song that once reflected the pain of past breakups, when performed later by him, takes on a different color. It is no longer a sigh of regret, but release, forgiveness, and peace. That is the sign of an artist who has found a home, and from that home he sings with a healed soul. It can be said, Sharon is not only a companion, but also the greatest inspiration, helping Henley write the final chapter of his music career, a chapter not noisy, but full of depth and humanity. From when he had 3 children, Annabelle, Julia, and Will, Henley is no longer just an artist. He becomes a father, a role he always sees as more important than any award or fame. He once said that what makes him happiest is not the cheers of tens of thousands of fans, but the moment sitting at the dinner table with family, listening to the laughter of his children. That's why he and Sharon decided to leave Los Angeles, return to Texas, where there are not too many glamorous lights, but space fresh enough to nurture a proper childhood. Henley teaches his children the way he was taught in his hometown: value family, live kindly with the community, and not be swept away by the vanity of fame. In his eyes, what matters is not whether the children follow in his music footsteps or not, but that they grow up to be compassionate people, knowing how to love and cherish the true values of life. It is truly moving when Henley, who once lived decades under stage lights, chooses for his children a quiet childhood, where they are close to grandparents, nurtured in the arms of family. For him, that is a priceless gift, a gift he himself lacked in the years wandering with the Eagles. Perhaps, when looking back at life, Henley realizes music can take him to the heights, but only family gives him a reason to stay grounded. And that is the difference between a rock star and a family man. Throughout his career, the relationship between Don Henley and the Eagles members has always been of public interest. Glenn Frey, Randy Meisner, Bernie Leadon, Joe Walsh, all together with him created a legend, but also went through no few conflicts, tensions, and separations. The band once disbanded in 1980, then reunited in 1994 with the famous Hell Freezes Over tour. In those stormy periods, Sharon and family became Henley's most important support. While the press often exploited internal Eagles conflicts, at his Texas home, Henley found balance. That is where he could set aside professional arguments, to return as a father, a husband. This contrast shows clearly Don Henley's two worlds. One side is pressure, competition, and sometimes the harshness of the music industry. The other side is peace, gentleness, and enduring family. And it is Sharon, with her steadfastness and strength, who helped him not be swept away in the storms of fame. Henley has admitted many times, if not for Sharon and the children, perhaps he would not have maintained that balance. They helped him sustain long-term friendships with Eagles members, despite disagreements. They not only share the glamour, but also face the truth together, that in the end, friendship and camaraderie are the eternal values. That is also why, at nearly 80 years old, Henley can look back at the long road with gratitude. He is not only remembered as a rock legend, but also as a man who learned how to harmonize art, friendship, and family. In his twilight years, Don Henley no longer seeks glory or glamour. He has gone through peaks that few reach, millions of albums sold, countless prestigious awards, and a name etched in world music history. But when looking back, Henley often speaks of simpler things: love, family, and the spiritual legacy he leaves for his children. In recent interviews, Henley often shares gratitude toward Sharon. He affirms that Sharon is the final piece completing his life, because after so many broken romances, after months lost amid fame, he found a love big enough to hold on, a love not built on glamour, but on patience, sharing, and loyalty. At age 77, Henley also spends much time reflecting on legacy. He understands that the Eagles' songs and his solo career will echo for decades more. But for him, what matters most is his three children, Annabelle, Julia, and Will, and he wants them to grow up not under the shadow of a legend, but with their own confidence, compassion, and strength. Henley once said, "Music took me around the world, but family is where I return." Those words are the summary of a life full of changes, from a small Texas boy becoming a global star, then finally returning as a family man. Perhaps, when audiences remember Don Henley, they will mention Desperado, Hotel California, or The Boys of Summer. But for him, the greatest legacy is not on stage, but right in the simple home in Texas, where there is Sharon, where there are the children, and where true love conquers all. Don Henley at age 77 is not just the journey of a music legend, but also proof of the power of love and family. From a small Texas boy, he has gone through glory and bitterness, through brilliant but fragile romances, to find true love in the most ordinary place. The lesson we can draw from his life is very clear. Glamour, no matter how brilliant, will fade with time. But love and family bonds, that is what lasts forever. Henley chose Sharon Summerall, despite the disease with no promises. And that choice turned the end of his life into the most beautiful chapter. Don Henley's music, songs like Wasted Time, The Heart of the Matter, Everything is Different, now are not just the voice of an artist, but also the confiding of a person seeking true happiness. And in the end, he found it. Henley's story carries a profound message, that it is never too late to find true love, never too late to build a home. Despite age, despite illness, or despite fading fame lights, true love still has the power to bring us to a peaceful shore, and that is the confession at age 77 of Don Henley. She is the love of my life. If the story about Don Henley has touched your heart, let us know your thoughts. In your opinion, what is the key to a lasting love? Leave a comment below. We look forward to hearing your opinions. Don't forget to like, share this video with friends, and subscribe to the channel to not miss touching stories behind Hollywood glamour. Each follow from you is motivation for us to continue bringing meaningful stories. And remember, sometimes, the most valuable lesson does not come from the brilliant stage, but from love and the simple home where we return.